Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. Soap, do not touch me. Calm down. Let me take that from you. It would probably be best for us all if you ease up on the wine. Piss off. It does not matter anymore if anyone sees, right? You ought to be grateful too, Darren. Cheers. Keep your voice down. Please, stay seated. Stop. That two-faced best... Oh, sorry, you surprised me, little one. Sissy, are you leaving already? Well... Come now, do not fret. I shall be back soon. All right then. What is that you have there in your hand? A bar of soap. Do you work here? No? I don't think so. What is that supposed to mean? Tell me your name then. I don't remember. Oh God. I believe my name is lost to me as well. Bad. This is nonsense. Does anything come to mind? Nothing. Well, nothing. Are you sure? I guess. Just a feeling of pain in my ribs. A blackout type of pain. And then I found myself here, standing in front of this store. That is not very promising. Have you tried using the telephone at the till? Yes. The dial tone goes on forever. And all these random items in the aisles? Nothing good? I looked. But this bar of soap is all you managed to find? Tess, I apologize. I might be starting to lose it a bit. Quite a bit, to be fair. It's fine. Let's just... I think we should try to piece together what we know, what we can try to find out. Okay? If you say so. All right. What do you remember about how you got here? I only remember feeling weightless. I could not feel my legs. I could not breathe and... Well, it was awful. And you also found yourself outside the store's entrance afterwards? Indeed. That's interesting. I'll tell you what happened before you got here. But you're going to have to keep an open mind to believe me. That's fine. It's about the soap. If you do not drop that wretched soap, let me finish. And so, before you got here, I was going through all the aisles, right? When I walked through this one, something, I can't place what it was, drew me to touch the bar. When I did, everything around me kind of morphed into another place. Oh, please, do not make light of this. No, it really happened. It was like entering a memory, and I was someone else at some sort of dinner party. When I came back from it, you walked inside, It cannot be. Why are we here? I do not understand. Anne, I think we're dead. And this store holds dead people's things. And get up. Get up now. Do not roll your eyes at me, you little. You just get dressed now. I laid your clothes on the dresser. Stop wasting time. We are to leave in 15. Mother, I cannot wear this. The lacing almost suffocated me just the other week. Skip dinner. I do not care. Your wardrobe consists of absolutely nothing but whoring attire. When did you buy all this rubbish? I said, I forbid you to place it back. Come back here. You are not leaving with those ridiculous clothes on. They are practically undergarments. Just leave me be. Are you trying to embarrass me? Your father? What will the English families think of us? They already mock us. And open this door at once, or I shall reveal your habit of drink to the entire club. Do not presume I am not willing to see you completely ruined. And go ahead, have at it then. Oh, is that so? Shall I also call Lolly here? Let us see what she has picked up from you, what she needs to rid herself of. No, just stop. I am coming out. Good. Now, strip, and hand those over. It seems I need to inform Maid Sadia that your room is to be properly cleaned out. Worry not, Mother. You will not see it again. That is for sure. It's you. What? I'm seeing your life. How do you know? I saw you in a mirror. And this whole time that life has been mine then, I had a small suspicion that it would be one of us. But each memory trip was so quick and scattered in time, I could never piece them together. Also, there's something else I found out. I've told you before that I can't hear anything in the memories. I believe so. Only thoughts with an indistinct inner voice? Yeah, but with the thoughts, I can technically hear other people in the memories. Maybe because of how our minds process words. Yes, and the woman who you called Mother. She said your name, my mother. So, what am I called then? Hera? It fits you. Why is that? I don't know. I just like that name, I guess. Oh? And do you like anything else about me? A lot of things. Good answer. Shall we try that aisle over there today? Maybe we will finally find an item for me to explore. Okay. But you're not curious about why I'm seeing your life in particular. I am. Though something tells me I do not want to know why. Why she is bleeding too much. You have already started. Might as well finish up. No need to do this. Hold her. Oh gods. You, no, stay back. Idiot. Keep her quiet. No one can know about this. When you are done, place this in her hand. Why? Symbolism, boy. There is to be a mad killer on the loose, cleansing sin in the ton. I cannot believe you touched it again. I didn't. I swear. It sounds stupid, but the soap literally flew into my hand when I wasn't looking. Trod, Hera, please say something. Did you see everything this time? How it ends? Yes, Vaidart. Do you want to know? No. But I know I ought to. Figure it is time to learn why that damned bar of soap is essential to my past life. I think you should too. What if this is it? I would not want to leave you. If you do, well, I'm just thankful for meeting you, even if it is after death. I only wish we knew your name as well. I don't need to know my own name. I know yours, and it's enough. Master of Puppets. Io sono il padrone, e tu sei il burattino. I am the master, and you are the puppet. Working in an antique store was hardly where Aislinn saw herself 5 years ago. But beggars couldn't be choosers in this economy. Her dreams of becoming someone had been crushed by the reality of life and the collapse of her support system after college. And she depended on this job to make ends meet. Still, something was charming about the Raven's wares, even if she did encounter some characters from time to time. Her cousin often asked her if she had ever felt spirits or weird energy working around the real skulls, the old Victorian dolls, or the taxidermy of the Raven that gave the store its name. Like everyone in the town, Aislinn had heard horror stories about the objects sold from this place. A man bought a doll for his daughter, and they all vanished without a trace a week later. A woman bought a pretty ring and died in a freak accident with the ring on her finger. Someone bought an old statue and fell down their stairs. The truth was, Aislinn didn't believe in those sorts of things. Ghosts, ghouls, or energies. Sure, the place was creepy if you worked late alone on long winter nights, but it paid the bills. Those horror stories were coincidences. Plenty of people had purchased items from the Raven's wrath without an issue. Her cousin believed in that side of things so strongly. People whispered about her behind their hands. If Aislinn started believing, what would they say about their family? It was bad enough she worked here. The customers you never heard about were outsiders. A tiny voice in her head would whisper when she had this argument with herself. You've never followed up to check on what happened afterwards. She looked up from her phone when Eli barged their way back through the piles of antique junk piled around the place. A guy dropped off this painting today. I'm telling you, it's weird. Aislinn knew that everything here was weird in one form or another. She once had someone try to offer a jar of real human teeth. That had been on her second day, and regrettably, it had not been her last strange experience. They jerked their thumb over their shoulder. It's out the back by the rocking horse. I need you to label it up before you leave tonight. Did he give any details? Nah, I'm surprised you didn't see him. Dark-haired guy, glasses, had some sort of accent. She vaguely recalled someone coming in of that description when she'd been restocking some old hardbacks and had directed him towards Eli. at the back of the store. She wouldn't have thought of him again, save for the odd look in his dark eyes. I sent him to the back to see you. He had this look in his eyes, like he'd seen things, you know? I offered him a fair price, but he didn't even want the money. He just said to take it. He didn't want money? Aislinn repeated slowly. That's a bit weird, don't you think? Maybe it came with bad memories or something. Eli shrugged. Just make sure to get it cataloged to go out on display. I've got to head off. I'll see you tomorrow. The afternoon was quickly fading, the air becoming colder and far less welcoming inside. The eyes of the raven on the desk seemed to watch her every move, and the gentle ticking of the antique clocks suddenly felt ominous. Even the shadows of the shelves seemed to be lengthening, reaching out in her direction. Aislinn looked up from her book and paused. The store had fallen eerily silent. She felt her heartbeat increase as the hair at the back of her neck stood up. Hello? Why was she calling out? There was no one there. No one had entered the shop. The bell above the door had been silent for hours. A faint whisper seemed to be coming from the distance. Someone must have left the radio on in the storage room. She walked to the back of the store, trying to ignore the feeling that the eyes of the dolls were watching her. It wasn't like her to be this paranoid. She pushed the door open wide and reached in to grab the portable radio the manager insisted on keeping around. Her hand found the handle and lifted it out. It was switched off. Okay, she muttered, feeling a cold trickle of sweat run down her back. She set the radio down on an empty stool and worked away around the mountains of antiques to find the latest addition to the collection. Aislinn pulled the sheet off slowly and recoiled. The painting was of a hanging puppet, clearly based on the original Pinocchio story. It's dressed in traditional clothes against a gruesome backdrop of bones and the occasional skull. The entire thing was bordered by a swirling wine-red, blood red. A shudder ran down her spine as she took in all the gruesome details. The glass on the front was cracked, but that was hardly anything they couldn't fix. There was something odd about the break, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. She turned the painting over to check the back of the frame and noticed a faded name on the back, too illegible to read, and an unmistakable bloody handprint. What the hell? The painting clattered to the floor as she reeled back, banging into a cabinet and screaming as the puppet hanging there swung into her face. Its painted smile seemed twisted into a cruel leer as she swatted it away, clutching at her chest. She took some calming breaths. She picked the painting up from the floor with shaking hands and turned it over, aware of her heart racing in her chest. There's no bloody handprint, only the faded marks of a name. You're going mad, she muttered to herself. You need to get out more. She carried the painting to the desk and started cataloging it, intrigued by the lack of an artist's mark. Even a quick Google search yielded no results, and after a few minutes, she brought it back to sit at the back by the dolls and puppets. She took a moment longer to stare at it and turned back to the front. There was a rocking horse in the middle of the aisle. No, that wasn't possible. She hadn't moved anything. Hello? She called out nervously. This isn't funny now. Come out. When no one answered, she tried to focus. Maybe it had been there before, and she had simply walked past it, not noticing. Eli had said the painting was out the back by the rocking horse. For a moment, her cousin's voice echoed in her ear. Though she tried to deny it, this was not the first time something like this had happened on her shift. Eli had laughed it off with her at the time, but she hadn't seen a bloody handprint last time. Eli had moved the horse. That's all there was to it. Aishlin walked back to the front of the store and stared out at the street. Across at the ordinary sight of the small local shop and the dress shop beside it. Maybe she needed a holiday. The radio started playing a Cure song. Had she turned it on? When had she brought it to the front? Suddenly, the dark shop seemed alien to her. No, now she was being stupid. She didn't believe in any of that stuff. A sudden tiredness overcame her as she sat back in her chair and started to doze, watching the cuckoo bird on the antique clock swing backwards and forwards, swinging. She could hear the distant creaking sound of a rope and sobbing cries, growing louder and louder. Oh, how painful, how painful. Why wasn't I good? Something was hovering in the corner of her vision. Every instinct in her body screamed at her not to turn and look, to run away from that shadow. She turned her head and saw the puppet from the painting. It raised its head and leered at her. Puppets have no soul, but they do a lot of harm. Suddenly, she was the one battling with the rope as the puppet laughed and screeched over and over. I want to be real. I want to be real. I want to be real. Aishlin leapt up from her sleep, feeling the phantom rope around her throat. Every item in the shop was facing her. They seemed to be looming towards her, skulls echoing the cries of the horrific voice as it cried out over and over. Whatever sick joke this was, she wasn't playing anymore. She ran to the door and tried to haul it open. It was locked. The room seemed to darken, and the sound of the puppet's voice, distant at first, became unmistakable, growing clearer with each passing second. Its whispers now unmistakably directed at her. Oh, che male. She picked up a metal poker and walked to where the painting sat. The voice was louder now, its desperate cries in both English and Italian piercing her ears. What the hell are you? The voices paused. You should let me out. You're just like me. You're a puppet too. Aishlin lifted the metal poker above her head. What? Are you? You should let me out, Aishlin. She tried to move away, but her back smacked into a large cabinet. What the hell are you? My last puppet didn't obey. He brought me here. Un burattino che non obbedisce. finisce sempre male. A puppet who does not obey always ends badly. You should let me out. I've always been here, waiting for someone to let me out. She realized then what was wrong with the glass. Someone, something, was trying to break free from the inside. Her own reflection in the glass warped into a puppet's face, and she felt the weight of something choking her. No, she was not a puppet. She was a human. This wasn't real. I am the master of puppets. Puppets have no soul, but they do a lot of harm. I tried to take his soul, but he broke free. You will let me out. You are my puppet now. You saw it in the glass. You're like me. Iceland watched in horror as the cracks in the glass grew wider. It will end badly for you if you do not obey. She lifted the poker to swing it, and the hands of the puppets on display reached out and grabbed her throat, pulling her backwards. A bad puppet is of no use to me. I have been waiting for you. There's nothing to be done. One must really die good. Iceland screamed, trying to throw the puppets off. She twisted in their grip, seeing the cracks grow wider and wider. When you're not real, nothing hurts, Iceland. But the more I try to be real, the more I feel pain. Oh, the pain. How painful this is. Can't you feel it? The creaking of the rope was unbearable. The spiraling voice wailing and wailing as she begged for this to stop, for her to wake up, to let this nightmare end. Iceland woke in her chair. The clock read the same time as it had before, but something was different. Everything was different. At some point, the gentle light of the afternoon had faded into a gray gloom bordering on darkness. This day seemed to be lasting an eternity. It was all a nightmare, a terrible nightmare. She saw it then. Her vision narrowed, and her chest tightened as she stared at it. The painting, mocking her from the back, as it always had. Maybe this was still a nightmare taken new form. Those horrible skulls leering at her, that noise, that endless noise. She approached it slowly and ran her hands over the cracks in the glass, feeling her skin crawl with revulsion. The glass was cold, unnaturally cold, like it was sucking the little warmth she had left from her fingers. I want to be real, Iceland. A voice whispered in her ear. You should let me out. I have waited so long. She grabbed the poker from where it lay on the ground and lifted it, bringing it down to strike the glass. A gloved hand reached out of the frame and snatched hold of her wrist, forcing her to drop the poker in shock. A puppet has no soul, but it can do harm. It cackled, drawing her closer to the frame. You're my puppet now. Your soul is mine. No! She screamed, grabbing at the nearest object, a porcelain bird, and throwing it at the puppet. You aren't real. None of this is real. She felt the world begin to blur and tried to pull away from its grip. But it was too late. This couldn't be it. This couldn't be how this ended for her. This wasn't fair. This wasn't fair. You aren't real, she cried as her mind began to break. You aren't real. She felt the rancid breath of the puppet as it whispered in her ear, and now neither are you. The chromatic drought. Detective Marcus Sine squinted at the fading landscape through his office window. Another day, another shade of gray, lost to whatever this phenomenon was. The sky no longer held its azure expanse, just a flat, pale ceiling hanging lifelessly above a world growing increasingly two-dimensional. 3 more reports of rivers running dry in the Eastern District, Officer Palmer said, dropping a thin file onto Sane's desk. And the hospitals reporting 17 new cases of what they're calling chromatic dehydration. Sine nodded grimly. The medical examiner had shown him the bodies last week. Skin paper thin, organs collapsed inward, as if someone had extracted not just the water, but the very substance from them. Their eyes, once spherical, had flattened to perfect circles, staring out from faces that resembled pencil sketches more than human remains. Any pattern to where it's spreading? Sine asked, though he already knew the answer. None that makes sense, Palmer replied. It's jumping between neighborhoods, between people who've never met. The only consistent thing is that once it starts in an area, everything there loses dimension within 72 hours. Sine turned away from the window. His own hands seemed less substantial today, the knuckles less pronounced, the veins no longer raised beneath his skin. He'd taken to pressing his palms against solid objects throughout the day, reassuring himself that he could still feel texture, still interact with a 3-dimensional world. What about the library research? He asked. Palmer's expression darkened. Archives are becoming affected. Books are losing their ink, words disappearing from pages, even as people try to read them. This was worse than Sane had feared. Knowledge itself was being drained from the world. The river had been the first to go in Westbrook. Once a vibrant, blue-green artery cutting through the heart of the city, it had faded to a pale, silvery streak before disappearing entirely, leaving only a shallow depression in the ground where water had flowed for centuries. Sine stood in the dry riverbed, feeling the cracked earth beneath his shoes. It didn't feel like drought. There was no sense of moisture having evaporated. Rather, it was as if the concept of river had been partially erased from reality, leaving behind this ghostly impression. Detective Sine, a woman approached him, her white lab coat nearly indistinguishable from the colorless landscape. Dr. Eliza Tanner, the city's leading physicist, had been studying the phenomenon since its first appearance 3 months ago. The process is accelerating, she said without preamble. We've been measuring the dimensional collapse, and what took weeks in the beginning is now happening in days. How long? Sine asked. until complete two-dimensionality for the entire planet? She shrugged, the gesture oddly truncated, as if her shoulders couldn't quite complete their full range of motion. At the current rate, 2 weeks, maybe less, Sign swallowed. And then what? I don't know, Dr. Tanner admitted. But I found something you should see. The university's rare book collection had been moved to a secure facility once the libraries began to empty. Dr. Tanner led Sign through rows of glass cases containing ancient texts, their pages increasingly blank as the phenomenon progressed. Most of our oldest manuscripts are already gone, she explained. But this one is different. She stopped before a small display containing what appeared to be a journal bound in matte black leather. Unlike the other books, whose pages had turned a uniform white, this one's text remained stubbornly visible, though the letters seemed to shift and rearrange themselves whenever Sane tried to focus on them. It's resisting the effect, Dr. Tanner said. And more importantly, it appeared in our collection the day the river began to fade. No record of acquisition, no catalog entry. It was simply there. Sign leaned closer. Can you translate it? Portions. It appears to be a record kept by something called the Society of Final Memory. From what I can decipher, they were an ancient order dedicated to preserving knowledge through catastrophic events. Preserving knowledge? But everything's being erased. Dr. Tanner's fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted her glasses. A gesture Sign noticed seemed less three-dimensional than it should have been. I think they made a mistake, she whispered. A terrible one. The journal led them to the underground chambers beneath the old cathedral. Sign had never known these catacombs existed, though they appeared to have been built centuries before the church itself. The society maintained outposts throughout the world, Dr. Tanner explained, as they descended the narrow stairs, flashlight beams cutting through dust that hung motionless in the air. According to the journal, they believed humanity was cyclical, civilizations rising and falling in patterns, with crucial knowledge lost in each collapse. So they preserved information across these cycles? Sign asked, ducking beneath a low archway. The stone felt wrong beneath his fingers, too smooth, as if the grain and texture were being slowly erased. Yes, but more than that, they developed a method to intentionally reset civilization if they deemed it necessary, a way to erase dangerous knowledge while preserving what they considered essential wisdom. The stairway opened into a vast circular chamber. At its center stood a pedestal holding what appeared to be an obsidian sphere, the only object Soin had seen in weeks that still possessed a sense of depth and dimension. Surrounding it, slumped against the walls and floor, were desiccated bodies, or rather, what remained of them. They resembled paper cutouts more than corpses, flattened and colorless. The last active members of the society, Dr. Tanner murmured. They activated the device, the mnemonic purge, they called it. But something went wrong. Sign approached the sphere cautiously. Unlike everything else in this fading world, it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. A perfect three-dimensional void amid the increasingly two-dimensional reality. The journal says the purge was meant to be selective, Dr. Tanner continued, her voice growing thinner, less substantial. To remove specific knowledge while leaving the fundamental structure of reality intact. But they miscalculated. Instead of erasing dangerous information, they started erasing the fundamental properties of existence: dimension, color, substance. And now it's spreading like a contagion throughout reality. Sign reached toward the sphere, feeling a strange pull. Can it be reversed? The journal wasn't clear, but Dr. Tanner's words cut off abruptly. Sign turned to find her frozen in place, her form suddenly flat against the wall, like a photograph. Her mouth was open in mid-sentence, but no sound emerged. Before his eyes, her image seemed to lose resolution, details blurring until she resembled a rough sketch more than a person. Dr. Tanner! He reached for her, but his hand passed through where her shoulder should have been. She wasn't just flat. She was becoming insubstantial. Sign turned back to the sphere in horror. The loss of dimensionality was accelerating. He could feel it in his own body, his lungs laboring to expand in 3 dimensions when reality only permitted 2. His vision narrowing as his eyeballs flattened into circles. The journal had described the purge as a reset, a way to begin civilization anew. But this wasn't renewal. This was erasure, with the last of his dimensional strength. Sane grasped the obsidian sphere. It burned cold against his palms, the sensation almost nostalgic, a reminder of when touch had depth and texture. If the society had started this, perhaps their tool could end it. The sphere pulsed beneath his touch, and Sane had the distinct sensation of something ancient and aware turning its attention toward him. Not a machine, but an entity, a consciousness that had been waiting, perhaps for centuries, for someone to recognize the terrible mistake. You understand, a voice whispered directly into his mind. The cycle was corrupted, the purge incomplete. How do I stop it? Sane gasped, feeling his vocal cords flattening, his words becoming as thin as paper. The purge cannot be stopped, but it can be completed correctly. The sphere began to glow with an impossible light. Not white, or any color Sign could name, but something that suggested all colors at once, dimensions beyond the 3 he knew. Choose what remains, the voice commanded. What essence of your world must survive to build anew? Sign understood then. The society hadn't intended to destroy reality, but to curate it, to select which elements would survive the transition to the next cycle. Their failure had been one of judgment, not mechanism. As his consciousness expanded into the sphere, Seyin saw the entirety of his fading world. Every person, place, and memory collapsing into flatness. And beyond that, he glimpsed other worlds, other cycles, stretching back through countless iterations of humanity. With his final three-dimensional thought, Sane made his choice. Hey, Jimmy, you still reading that comic? Mrs. Abernathy called from behind the drugstore counter. Those new Detective Sane stories are all black and white. Now that the war's on, not much to look at. 12-year-old Jimmy Marshall didn't look up from the final panels of Detective Sane and the mystery of the vanishing world. He traced his finger over the stark black and white illustrations, the flattened city, the mysterious sphere, the hero's final choice. I don't mind, Mrs. Abernathy, he replied. The story's better than the colors, anyway. He turned to the last page, where Detective Sun stood before a newly dimensional world, color bleeding back into the edges of the panel as rivers began to flow again and people regained their solid forms. The final caption read, "And so Sun chose to preserve not knowledge or power, but the capacity for dimension itself, the ability to grow, to change, to become more than flat impressions on a finite page." Jimmy closed the comic carefully. Outside the shop window, a military convoy rumbled past, headed for the docks and then across the Atlantic. The world was at war, resources were scarce, and luxuries like colored ink for comics were among the first casualties on the home front. But as he stepped outside into the April sunshine, Jimmy couldn't help seeing the world a little differently, noticing the subtle depths and dimensions that existed even in the harshest of times, the colors that persisted even when they couldn't be printed on a page. He tucked the comic securely under his arm and headed home, unaware that in his hands he carried one of the last remaining artifacts of a civilization that had faded not once, but countless times before, each cycle preserved paradoxically within the flat, two-dimensional pages of a story that refused to be forgotten. I met death last night, being alone in one of London's many streets. I was already cold, but his presence behind me was more than that. It was ice, sharp, hard ice that seared through my flesh, traveled through my blood, urging goosebumps to shoot out of my skin. When I turned down the lonely alley, I regretted it instantly. It was said that he lingered in dark streets, waiting for a desperate soul to pass him by. But still, I had decided to keep going. Arriving in London on the night of my sister's birthday was already fine, but her party had begun at 8 p.m., and I didn't need to look at my watch to know that it was way past that already. She would kill me for being late. So late. But that wasn't the only reason I dared not turn back. It had been too long since I'd last walked these streets, since I'd last felt the heavy air of London pressing down on me, clogging my lungs with soot and smoke. Life on the road had made me lighter, more restless, but coming back here was like stepping into a grave. The city had a way of sinking its teeth into you, of making you forget where you'd been and why you'd left. Fearing death was childish. My parents had told me as such when I refused to go on one of the rides at the festival extravaganza during our trip to America. But this was different. Like the images in my mind of falling from great heights and being trampled by horses had cleared, revealing something so impossible that it was the only thing my mind deemed plausible. He was behind me. I did not turn around. I did not blink. My eyes remained open, forgetting how dry they had become. I just stood there, an invisible force stopping my feet from taking off into a run, from sprinting around corners and through streets until he would inevitably catch me. I wondered what it would feel like. A sudden pain in my chest, a fog corrupting my mind. My vision slowly dimmed until I drifted off into a never-ending, dreamless sleep. Or maybe I would feel nothing. Maybe I would be awake 1 second, thinking of all the ways I was going to die, and the next I would be lying on the ground, waiting for someone to find me. Although by then, it would be too late. No one could ever be saved. The goosebumps grew larger as his presence sauntered towards me, like prey waiting for the predator, knowing that it was neither fast enough nor strong enough to face it. I thought about all those moments I had let slip through my fingers, all those opportunities I had missed out on, all those potential friends, and more that I had hung back from, thinking that I wasn't worth their time. Now, I thought that I should have chosen who was worth my time, for it was going to be shorter than anyone would have expected. And who would have blamed them for thinking I had all the time in the world? I always thought, never did. Always calculated, never acted. Always worried about others, and never spared a thought for myself. Now, just like then, I waited. He was as silent as the night. The once cawing crows and hissing cats were already in mourning. He stood right behind me, dark as a shadow. His breath a gentle breeze against my neck. The single word spoken in a voice rich in charm, alluring me to turn around, to face the predator. But I did not turn around. Still, I did not blink. The feeling in my fingers came back, and I was met with the warmth of coming out of an ice bath into the blazing sun. My feet began to move, the invisible force gone like it was never there. And soon I was running, running through winding streets, trying to think of anything but what had just happened. I'm late, I thought. I'm so late. And my sister will be mad. I tried to convince myself that was why I was running. Nothing happened. I saw nothing. My breath tore through the night's air as my book struck the slick cobblestones. Gas lamps fought against the choking fog, blinding me. The stray hairs that I had forgotten to shave on my arms stood up as ice invaded my lungs once more. No, please no. I had heard people talk about terror whipping through them, causing them to panic and shake. But that was a lie. Terror didn't come all at once. It came in waves, each one bigger than the last, freezing my lungs and clenching my throat in a vice-like grip. Why did I think that I could outrun him? Why did I think I could outrun the inevitable? I looked down at my pale skirts, now splattered in mud, and refused to look up again. The shock of what I might see would kill me before he did. He made no sound as he approached for the second time. No footsteps, no shift of breath or fabric. Just the sudden, certain sense of him standing before me. Close, too close. My eyes stayed down. I could feel him watching me, the weight of his gaze pressing against my skin like the brush of fingertips. My breath hitched. My fingers curled into the folds of my dress. He said nothing. He did nothing. Just stood there, silent and motionless. The seconds stretched and broke. My pulse thudded in my throat, like the fear in my stomach, mixing with something warmer, darker beneath my ribs. I imagined what his eyes must have been like. Dark, unblinking, tracing the line of my collarbone and the curve of my mouth. Then, just as quietly as he had come, he left for the second time in a single hour. Slowly, cautiously, I dared to lift my head. The street was empty again, mist curling through the dim light. I waited for what might have been seconds or minutes. I didn't know. But I managed to walk again. But I didn't run. I no longer cared that I was late. Finally, I reached it. A tall iron gate, its surface slick with rain that I hadn't realized was falling. A footman in a crisp coat stood at attention beneath a gaslight's feeble glow, his face blank under the brim of his hat. His eyes sharpened when he saw me. Without a word, he pushed the gate open, allowing me to slip through. The moment the gate clicked shut behind me, the street's grim chill seemed to dissolve. A long, white gravel path wound through manicured gardens, lit by golden candles and strung by iron posts. Tall windows loomed over me as music floated through the air. As soon as I made it into the house, I passed the polished wood and gilded mirrors, up the stairs to the spare bedroom where I flopped onto the well-made bed, ignoring the state of my clothes. Did I feel bad for leaving my sister on her birthday? Of course, but I just couldn't cope with anyone or anything. I didn't think I could even fall asleep, no matter how much my body craved it. I had spent so long moving from place to place, never staying long enough to leave a mark, never bothering to make ties. I told myself it was because I liked the freedom, the open road, the thrill of waking up in a new city with new faces. But the truth was simpler. It was easier not to care when you knew you wouldn't stay long enough to lose anything. I met death last night, and I lived. The hunger, it happened overnight. One evening, the whole world was bathed in the rich hues of a setting sun. The sky painted in oranges and purples. The next morning, everything had turned gray. Not just dull or faded, color itself was gone. The trees, flowers, ocean, even people's skin and eyes had become mere variations of black, white, and gray. It was if reality had been drained, leaving behind a lifeless, monochrome wasteland. At first, scientists tried to explain it as some anomaly in human vision, a mass hallucination, an unknown pollutant in the air. But when they dissected plants and animals, their tissues were colorless at a molecular level. Screens, paintings, dyes, nothing could produce a single shade beyond the grayscale spectrum. Then, people started disappearing. It wasn't like normal vanishing. There were no signs of struggle, no footprints leading away. One moment, someone was there, and the next, gone, like they had been erased from existence. The only thing left behind was a faint, smudged shadow on the ground, as though they had begun to dissolve before vanishing entirely. Escher had been watching it happen for weeks. He kept a notebook where he marked every missing person in his town, tracking patterns, trying to make sense of it all. At first, the patterns were unclear, just a slow trickle of missing people. The painters, the poets, the dreamers, those who had dared to whisper about color, to grieve its absence, were the first to go. Then, it was the children who still dreamed in color, their small voices describing the impossible. A sky that wasn't gray, a sun that burned gold. Each one disappeared without a sound, leaving behind nothing but that eerie, smudged shadow. Now, Escher could feel it watching him, lingering just at the edge of his vision, a weight in the air that pressed against his skull, cold fingers at the nape of his neck. The more he thought about color, the stronger it became, like a slow, suffocating whisper wrapping around his mind. He had a theory, but it curdled in his stomach like rot. What if whatever took the color away was still here? And what if it didn't want anyone to remember what had been lost? Escher kept his theory to himself. He had seen too many people vanish after speaking too freely. But in the quiet of his apartment, under a single flickering bulb, he scrawled his thoughts into his notebook, pressing the pencil so hard against the paper that the tip snapped. That night, sleep came in restless waves. Dreams of golden sunrise, of green forests and sapphire oceans, flickered behind his closed eyelids. Something else lurked there too, a whispering void pressing at the edges of his vision, a presence that noticed him. He woke with a start, heart pounding. The bulb above him flickered more erratically now, casting sharp, jumping shadows across the walls. Then he saw it. A smudge, one of those gray stains on the floor near his desk. It hadn't been there before. It looked like the others, the ones left behind by the vanished. But he was still here. Escher reached out a shaking hand, brushing his fingers over the smudge. Ice shot up his arm. His breath hitched, his vision wavered, and for a split second, he saw something, a figure, a shifting mass of darkness standing in the corner of his room, featureless, faceless, but watching him, waiting. The moment passed, and he yanked his hand away. The thing was gone, but he knew it had been real. He flipped open his notebook with trembling fingers. If he was right, he had limited time before it came for him. He needed answers. Somewhere out there, someone knew the truth. Someone who was still alive. Escher didn't sleep again that night. He sat at his desk, staring at the smudge on his floor, waiting for it to move. It didn't, but something else did. A creak in the hallway. Slow, deliberate, his breath hitched. He lived alone. The sound came again, closer this time. A dragging shuffle, like bare feet sliding across wooden floors. Escher reached for the nearest object, a rusted letter opener. Pathetic, but it was something. He moved toward the door, silent, his pulse slamming against his ribs. He pressed his ear against the wood. Nothing. Then a whisper. Not words, just a sound. Something wrong. Like wind whistling through hollow bones. Escher yanked the door open. The hallway was empty, but the walls weren't. Long, uneven handprints streaked the wallpaper, dragging downward, as if something had clawed its way along. The air was thick, pressing, like he had stepped into a vacuum where sound and light had begun to fold in on themselves. Then he noticed the door at the end of the hall. Apartment 203. No one had lived there for months. But now, it was open. A sliver of darkness yawned beyond the threshold, impossibly black, deeper than shadow. Something was inside, watching, waiting. Fingers slowly emerged from the darkness, wrapping around the edge of the door, not quite human. Too long, too thin, curling around the edge of the door. The skin wasn't just gray. It was wrong, shifting like static, like it wasn't fully real. The fingers twitched. Escher bolted. He didn't stop until he was outside, breath steaming in the cold air. The city was dead silent, buildings looming in their gray-scale monotony. But something had changed. The streetlights flickered, and for the first time since the color vanished, Escher saw something new. In the distance, above the rooftops, high in the night sky, a single, pulsing red light, the first color he had seen in weeks. And deep in his gut, Escher knew it was calling to him. He had two choices: run the other way and pretend he never saw the red light, or go to it. Every survival instinct screamed for the first option, but something deep inside, something primal, pulled him toward the second. It was the first color in a world that had been stripped bare. It was wrong, unnatural, but it was something. His feet were already moving. The city was eerily empty. Cars abandoned at intersections, their windshields coated in dust. Storefronts remained open, shelves half-stocked, as if people had simply walked away from their lives. The red light pulsed, steady and slow, coming from the tallest building in the city, the old communications tower. As Escher approached, he felt it before he heard it. A deep, low hum, subsonic, just beneath the range of hearing, but strong enough to feel in his bones. The street lights flickered in time with it. A shadow moved up ahead. Escher froze. A figure stood in the middle of the street, facing away. Motionless, the man, or what had been a man, wore a tattered suit. Its fabric faded to gray like everything else. Something was wrong with him. His arms hung too long at his sides, limp and lifeless. His head titled slightly, as if listening to something Escher couldn't hear. And then, slowly, the man's neck snapped back, bending at an impossible angle. His face, Escher sucked in a deep breath. The man's eyes were gone. Just smooth, gray skin where they should have been. His mouth hung open in a silent, gaping O, like something had hollowed him out from the inside. And then, without moving his lips, a whisper slid from his throat. "You shouldn't see the color." Escher ran. His breath came in short, sharp gasps, feet pounding the pavement. The communications tower loomed ahead. The hum grew louder. The street lights died. Darkness swallowed everything except for the red glow above, pulsing faster now, more urgent. Something was chasing him. He could hear it, a skittering, impossibly fast, limbs scraping against the pavement. The tower doors were open. Escher threw himself inside and slammed them shut. Silence. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. He took a shaky breath, turning to face the interior. The building was empty. An old stairwell wound up in the dark, leading to the roof. The red glow pulsed from above. There was a voice. Not from behind the door, not the stairwell, but from inside the room. A whisper, slithering through the air like a breath against his ear. You were not supposed to remember, Escher finally realized. The red light hadn't been calling him. It had been warning him. He turned slowly, his breath shallow. The room was empty, but the whisper had been right next to him. The red light pulsed above, faster now. Urgent. He forced himself forward, gripping the stairwell railing. He had to reach the top. He had to see whatever was waiting for him. The climb was endless. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the walls. His vision swam, his skin prickling, like something unseen was brushing against him. The climb ended at a door, rusty, slightly ajar. Beyond it, the red glow bled into the darkness. Escher pushed it open. He walked out onto the roof. The city stretched out below, dad and colorless. At the center of it all, perched on the tower's antenna, like a grotesque, broken thing, whatever it was not a machine. It was alive, a shifting, writhing mass, its surface pulsing with sickly veins of red light. It had no defined shape, no eyes or mouth, just an undulating, wet mass of twisting tendrils, each one ending in something horrifying. Faces, not full heads, just faces, half-formed, stretched, and distorting, mouths open in silent screams. They flickered in and out of existence, as if trapped. Escher knew, deep in his bones, these were the ones who had vanished. Not erased, not destroyed, absorbed. His stomach twisted, and his knees nearly gave out. The red light flared, and suddenly he remembered. The color hadn't been taken. It had been consumed, and the thing was still hungry. A shadow loomed from behind him. Escher turned just in time to see the eyeless man from the street standing in the doorway. But he was different now. His face was melting, the edges smearing like wet charcoal, his features slipping away. The man took a step forward, then another, and with each step, his body blurred, losing detail, like he was being erased in real time. "Join us," the voices whispered. Escher staggered back. The fleshy mass of faces quivered, responding to the movement, its tendrils stretching toward him. The eyeless man, if he even was a man anymore, took another step forward. His form blurred, warping like wet ink, his face melting away completely. Escher tried to run, but something grabbed his ankle. Ice shot up his leg as a tendril snaked up his calf. It wasn't solid, not exactly. It was like touching static, buzzing, shifting, eating away at him the moment it made contact. A dark gray substance was oozing out of his skin like ink in water. He kicked, thrashed, clawed at the rooftop, but it was pulling him in. More tendrils lashed out, latching onto his arm, his torso, his face, cold, deep, endless. His vision swam. Shadows moved at the edges of his sight. His skin tingled as something deeper than pain rippled through him, like he was being unraveled. The voices rose in a distorted, guttural chorus. "Join us," Escher gasped. And for the briefest moment, he saw everything. Not just the city, not just the rooftop. Beyond, the world before color disappeared, and the thing that had come before that, something vast, endless, watching, waiting. That fleshy thing of faces wasn't the beginning. It was only a fragment of something much worse. The red light pulsed one final time. Then it went out. Silence. Darkness. A whisper rippling through the void. Now we are free. Gridlock of the mind. The 405 stretched endlessly before me, a vein of asphalt pulsing with the dull monotony of brake lights. Every morning, I merged into the current of half-conscious souls, each of us trapped in the same routine, inching forward to destinations we resented. My corporate job barely paid my bills, and my spirit eroded with each passing day. Yet, like a prisoner resigned to their cell, I got into my car every morning, hoping, futilely, that something, anything, would change. Today felt no different. The same stifling air, the same murmur of the radio, the same dull ache pressing behind my eyes. I stared ahead, watching as the red taillights blinked and glowed in a never-ending pattern, hypnotic in their rhythm. I sighed, my hands gripping the wheel. This wasn't life. This was something else, some cruel purgatory where change was an illusion. As I drove, a strange sensation washed over me, an unsettling tug at the back of my mind. It was faint at first, like the nagging feeling of forgetting something important. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. Had I left the stove on? No, I hadn't cooked in days. My laptop? No, it was in my bag, thrown onto the passenger seat in my usual morning autopilot. Then what? My phone rang, vibrating against the plastic cup holder. The number flashed on the screen. Unknown, but I knew better. Bill collectors. I clenched my jaw before answering, already bracing myself. Hello? A voice on the other end rattled off my name, their tone all business, all demand. We're calling about your outstanding balance. I exhaled sharply, my frustration boiling over. Do you think I don't know that? Do you think I just forgot? I'm sitting in traffic, wasting my life away every single day to make barely enough to survive. And you think I magically have money for you? Tell me, how am I supposed to pay you when I can't even afford to live? Silence. A pause. Then the collector launched into their script again. As if my words meant nothing, I hung up. Hard. The phone clattered onto the seat, and I turned the music up. Loud. A mix of music and Spotify affirmations played in an endless loop. You are strong. You are capable, a voice repeated. But the words felt hollow against the weight pressing down on me. I switched back to music, something loud enough to drown it all out. But after a few minutes, I found myself back on the affirmations, searching for something, anything that might stick. You are in control of your life, the voice insisted. I scoffed, flipping back to music again. The bass thumped through my chest, rattling through my bones, drowning out the rage, the helplessness, the crushing weight of it all. I shook the feeling off and pressed forward. But the thought gnawed at me, creeping into the corners of my mind like an itch I couldn't scratch. The traffic slowed, locking me into a dead stop between exits. I drummed my fingers against the wheel, the silence growing unbearable. Something was wrong. Something was missing. The air inside the car felt heavier now, oppressive. I adjusted my rearview mirror and caught a glimpse of my own eyes, shadowed and hollow. Was it always this way? Was I always this way? The weight of exhaustion bore down on me. My limbs felt heavier than they should. Had I slept enough last night? Had I ever slept enough? I closed my eyes, taking slow, steady breaths. But when I opened them, the scenery outside seemed different. The colors muted, the sounds dampened. My vision blurred for a moment before snapping back into focus. But the creeping unease remained. I was losing time. One moment, I was at the interchange, and the next, I was pulling into the parking garage beneath my office building. My heart pounded as I stepped out of the car, my legs unsteady, as if I had forgotten how to walk. The air felt wrong, too thick, too still. I moved through the lobby, the fluorescent lights above buzzing softly, pressing against my skull like a dull migraine. The elevator doors slid open, and I stepped inside. The mirrored walls reflected me back at myself. And for a fleeting moment, I saw something else. A blur, a shadow of someone who wasn't quite me. I blinked, and it was gone. The doors opened to my floor, and I walked down the sterile hallway, my footsteps muffled against the carpet. My hands were cold, my breath shallow. My mind screamed at me to turn back, to run, but my body moved forward, as if caught in the undertow of a dream. I reached my office door, hesitated, then turned the knob. The room was dark. The air smelled of familiarity, of something deeply personal. My breath hitched as I took a step inside, and the walls expanded, morphing, shifting. No, I wasn't at the office. I was home. My bedroom lay before me, unchanged and untouched, as if I had never left. My unmade bed, the half-empty coffee cup on my nightstand, the soft hum of the city outside my window. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering. How? I had driven here. I had spent an hour in traffic. I had been walking into my office just moments ago. I turned, reaching for the door, but when I opened it, there was no hallway, just the same road, the same endless stretch of the 405. My hands trembled as I turned back toward my room, only to find it dissolving around me, slipping through my fingers like sand. And then I was back in my car. Traffic had barely moved. The radio played the same mindless chatter, and the clock on my dashboard blinked mockingly. 7:45 a.m., just like it always was. I let out a shaky breath, gripping the wheel so tightly, my knuckles turned white. My skin felt cold. My pulse raced. What was real? Where had I been? And then the realization hit me. I was late. I was still home, still in bed, still asleep. The panic rose, clawing up my throat as I fumbled for my phone, desperate to check the time, to wake myself up. But when I looked down, my hands weren't there. The car, the traffic, the drive, it wasn't real. I never left my bed. I was still dreaming, or living a nightmare over and over. The death of the artist. People file, though, galleries like they're waiting in the queue at the pharmacy. Ooh, I hear someone say. I like that one. Pointing at a depiction of the artist being ripped to shreds in the war-torn jungles of Vietnam, like it's a new type of corn plaster she's thinking of taking for a spin. Most people move at a bureaucratic pace, past each frame. Tick, tick, tick. It makes sense if you want to see as much as you can. As the factoid goes, if you looked at each painting in the Louvre for just 30 seconds, it would take over 8 days to see them all. Nobody has that much time. I sit at the other end of the spectrum. I want to find artwork I'm entranced by. And when I do, I offer myself up for captivity. Captivate me, I say, as I look at it loudly close up and quietly from a distance. I look at it in and out of focus. I close my eyes to try and recreate it in my mind. Then I look again. I look at the little corners that the artist probably thought nobody would focus on, or at that figure in the background, doing an impression of being incidental. I sit at bench 40Q in the Turner Contemporary, Margate. The painting I'm looking at has been in the gallery's permanent collection for 1183 days, and I've been here for most of them. Not in this spot the whole time. I'm not a lunatic. I do know the security guards by name, though, and they me. Trev, Stu, and Gaz have all added me on Instagram. Gaz has a great side hustle in bespoke, oversized macrame pieces. The gallery is on my way to and from work, and my twice daily visits to this painting have been a helpful pause, an inhale, exhale, as I take my own bureaucratic steps. So I feel like I've put in enough hours to generalize a little bit about gallery goers. The painting I sit in front of is called The Success of Icarus. It's a trans avant-garde painting. That is to say, it's bold and expressive. It tells its story with drama. Icarus doesn't fall. He rises. His arms stretch out to the sun. He is enveloped in white light, and his feathers begin to fall away. But his face is ecstatic. I've always thought he looks like someone at the top of a roller coaster, eyes wide with exhilaration, anticipation, and fear. The sea lies below him, painted in pale, insignificant colors, the waves soft and cushioning. It's 36 by 48 inches, oil on canvas, and an absolute smash hit. I'm not quite telling the truth. It's not trans avant-garde. It's actually a response to the trans avant-garde movement. But now, we're really counting brushstrokes. It doesn't matter. The only place it ever mattered was during my PhD. One gallery goer reads the accompanying text for longer than he looks at the painting. I know it off by heart. The Success of Icarus, Hilary Vale, 1981. Oil on canvas. Vale reimagines the myth of Icarus, portraying him not as a tragic figure, but as a symbol of elation and freedom. With vibrant colors and dynamic energy, this celebratory painting challenges our shared narratives, focusing on flight rather than fall. The artist requested multiple revisions of this piece, leading to legal action by the gallery before the final version was completed in 1988. I check my phone. 8:46, already 1 minute late. I stand up to go. "Cheerio, Nate," says Trev. "Bye," I say, and stop. I step closer to Icarus, narrowing my eyes. Is that... I lean in. Maybe it's because I've been thinking about all the changes Vale made. But I swear, there's something different about it. Next to Icarus's mouth, where the feathers are beginning to scatter amongst the confusion of barbs, there's an unfamiliar shape. It looks a little bit like a teacup. I immediately dive down into the reservoir of Vale knowledge within me, but come up disappointed. I thought I knew every brush stroke, but Vale can still surprise me. I keep thinking about the teacup all the way to work, thinking loudly up close and quietly from a distance. It puzzles me. When I left my PhD, I had 2 criteria in my job search. It should offer me enough spare change for the 1 hukiryo tubs of kimchi, and it should be at least 99% conflict-free. I appreciate that there will always be some disagreements about the correct biscuit to have in the office, which I allowed 1%. I became a finance administrator at the Arts Center. Processing invoices, I thought, would be safe territory. Unfortunately, the artists who work for us don't care about submitting neat and accurate expense claims. And the people who owe us money don't really want to pay up. It's been 3 years. I still haven't really had the heart to make them, so now I'm failing art itself. I'm on my lunch break when I see it. There, on the top shelf of the cupboard, with the plastic champagne flutes, pumpkin carving kit, and a mug shaped like Dolly's head, is the teacup. My hand shakes as I gently lift it down, cupping it in my palms like a baby chick. It is very delicate looking, with a slightly worn gold rim. The only remarkable thing about it is a distinct blue tinge inside. Again, I search for some sense of recognition, but find nothing. I wrap it in my jumper, then in my bag, out of the way. All afternoon, I'm tempted to Google Hillary Vale blue teacup, but don't. Partly because I want the satisfaction of decrypting the enigma, and partly because I'm worried I'll stray into territory NSFW. When did I discover Vale? I was 14, an age where I loved things absolutely, before caution and caveats got in the way. We were studying a painting by Theodore Redgrave, a friend and artistic contemporary of Vale. Burned bright, died young by suicide. Small oeuvre, huge potential, all lost. My teacher couldn't miss me having a screechingly obvious, pivotal moment in his second period Tuesday art class. If you like this, check out Hillary Vale. There's a lot more to get into, he said, in the same voice he'd use to suggest that I might want to put the lids back on the pens. I did a quick search for Vale's work. When I got home, I stayed up all night looking at it. I loved it. Loved the look of it. Loved his insistence on choosing the vibrant. Already at 14, the world's narratives felt familiarly miserable. VOL said, "Fuck that." VOL made me feel more me. I loved the last laugh, in which rainbow confetti erupts from the mouths of diners, laughing in the face of death. I loved Gutterfolk, a mid-'80s depiction of nurses providing hands-on care to an AIDS patient. I loved The Divine Mess, a vivid celebration of celestial chaos. I loved Hercules in Lace, in which the hero, draped in soft pink material, holds a club in one arm and cradles a baby in the other. I loved Sebastian, in which the saint looks too bored with his suffering to feel it. And of course, I loved the success of Icarus. That night, my heart pumping neon red blood through my body, I'd looked up VOL himself. Still alive. Not just that, contactable. I wrote him an email to say, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." When I arrive home from work, I put the teacup on the top shelf of my own cupboard. It is hardly in danger from my part cat, part cushion icky, but it feels right to try and keep it safe. "All right, Gaz. Afternoon, Nate. Been at the macrame again then?" I wave my phone. Can't not do it. He winks and chuckles, not finding that joke any less funny than the first time he told it. I am just about to tell Gaz I've been meaning to put in a good word for him in the cafe exhibition space at the art center, when I look at Icarus and see it has changed again. "Do you see that?" I point next to where the teacup was. "What? It looks like a bottle, a tiny bottle, pouring. See it?" Gaz wrinkles his nose. "Nah, can't see it, Nate. You must have looked at this guy one too many times." He makes the sign for crazy. "But then again," he says, "what do I know? I'm not the art doctor, eh?" He slaps me on the back. I pause, my gaze suddenly completely stuck. Well, neither am I. Am I? Close enough, mate. I shake myself out of it. Make myself look him in the eye. Smile. I must remember to speak to Maggie about the cafe space. On the walk home, Gaz's comments pull me back to that moment, that room, 3 or so years ago. There's a certain shade of disdain, which I've only seen from professors. Somewhere along the road to seniority, they all master it. Maybe they teach it at the graduation ceremony. Wouldn't know. Professor Sophie Simons, preeminent trans avant-garde expert with a specialism in Hilary Vale, had printed off my thesis so far. She had not sent me the notes ahead of my supervision. I'd been waiting 2 months since our last meeting. This copy had creased pages, coffee and wine, stains, and as she passed it over, she said, "Sorry, it appears some pages are out of order." I flicked through the first few pages, which had been scrawled on in various hands. "What's going on?" We sat opposite each other in her poky, umbrous office. It was a room in which I felt a Vale expert should have refused to teach. She perched on the edge of her chair, hands clasped. I felt, last supervision, that our conversation was unproductive. Her expression was concerned. Yes, we argued. A spirited discussion about the Redgrave matter. Any more than that, and I would have referred the matter to the faculty. She raised an eyebrow. Please bear that in mind, she continued. In our world, debate is par for the course. Pardon the pun, if you will. We must all stand up to critical vigor. But there is a point at which that becomes inappropriate. Please, I can't take another attack. You must hear me, Nathaniel, when I tell you that you have reached and passed that limit. Her voice became sharp. I can't tell you how many times I have attempted to dissuade you from your theory that Icarus was painted by a dead man. I think he's a collaborator, obviously not after he died, I said, already exasperated. Please refrain from interrupting me. I don't wish to argue with you. Her tone softened. I do ask that you hear me. Otherwise, we won't have time for you to complete your studies. We'll have to consider deferral, or worse. She smoothed down her skirt and clasped her hands again. I really do want you to consider this, as I'm sure you could be a stellar presence in the trans-avant-garde academic community. I've taken the time to ask my most eminent colleagues to read your draft. You will find some intellectual truths here from those who should matter if you want to pursue a future as a VOL scholar. Icarus is not a lost Redgrave. It is a tribute to him. This is a crossroads. There's still time to take another path. I've contacted VOL. I know he'll get back to me soon. The artist is not the canonical interpreter of their work. You know this. It doesn't matter either way. It's futile. She held her head in her hands and addressed him as though he were a 5-year-old who'd used her acrylics to paint the radiator. The work speaks for itself, Nathaniel. I knew as I walked out that it would be the last time we'd speak, at least as professor and student. Even if I picked some other central argument, with this thesis trick, she'd done a bang-up job of preemptively raising my reputation. I'd expected the worst, but even this didn't prepare me for the ambush when I read the notes. Inchoate notion of VOL's context. Gutterfolk is 1987, not 1986. Fundamental misapprehension of VOL and Redgrave styles. Absolutely, Stephen. Couldn't agree more. You must abandon this notion. And one which simply said, "Ha, I'm so deep in memory, I nearly miss the small bottle. It's peeking out from a pile of discarded food packets by my bins. It's made of thick blue glass with a floral pattern. I have a battle with the cork stopper, but eventually I'm victorious. The inside smells of bitter almonds. I quickly replace it. I know very well what Redgrave drank to kill himself. What I don't know is why it's in my possession. I walk home quickly and put it on the shelf next to the teacup. VOL wouldn't have spent time on grim thoughts. So after Professor Simons and I uncoupled, I tried my best not to ruminate. I hadn't won over the establishment, and the artist had not validated my theory. But no one died, just my ambitions and the plan for the rest of my life. As I look at Icarus this evening, I get as close up as I'm allowed. I trace my finger in the air over the brush strokes of the impossibly textured sea, a palimpsest. I look at the eyes, which bear a hint more definition than VOL's usual style. They look wider, more fear than exhilaration in them today. As I scan the sky, I see them all. The teacup, the bottle, and holding the bottle, a hand, not Icarus's. I think about my solitary park walk home and bite my nails. "Oh, right, Nate," I hear Security Stu call. "Heard you got Gaz his first exhibition." Maggie had loved the idea of macrame. Apparently, cord is in. He shakes my hand vigorously. "Good lad. About time Gaz got some recognition for his strings." "No problem," I say. "Evening, Stu." I glance at Icarus one last time before leaving. I can't help but see the hand. The little finger sticks out. Jaunty. Camp. I wonder if I'll make it home. I'm really glad I put the bottle of cyanide where Icky can't get it. I'm close to the park when my phone begins to ring. It says unknown number, but I know who's calling. I answer. "Hillary Vale?" "That's right." Hearing such a familiar voice addressing me feels like seeing the eyes of Icarus turn, slowly seeking to fix directly on mine. "You emailed me a long time ago. Sorry it's taken me so long to reply." "You really don't have to," I say. He laughs, and even though now I know what I know, I still feel a rush, an aurora surge within me. "I sent you some emails more recently. I could have done with a reply to them, too." I pause. Regrave painted Icarus, didn't he? It takes a while for Vale to reply. He was more of a collaborator. But yes, we made it together. I'm back in the office. I'm telling Professor Simons. I imagine her face, those clasped hands, gripping on to the last moments of her illustrious reputation. I've still got the thesis covered in vicious marginalia. I could publish it. Watch as they all turn on each other until I realize they won't believe you, he says. I imagine myself actually trying to explain the situation and realize that I have no evidence. I am only Mr. Nate Crow, an embittered conspiracy theorist trying to tarnish the memory of a living legend. Why do you think I've revealed this to you? Keep the trinkets. The police won't want them. I can hear him smiling. You murdered your friend, I say. Why? To live, Nate, he says. I had no choice. Think of my life with him still around. He was always the better artist. It was a fine margin. But there it was. Every award, every exhibition opportunity. He was there around every corner, winning it all. I always thought I could achieve more, do better, outrun him like Atalanta, until he painted Icarus. When I saw it, how remarkable he had made my vision. That's when I knew I'd never be legendary with him around. I was great, but he was greater. And so, His voice became a forced rasp. I needed to be the sun. Why tell me at all? I ask. Nate, it's been 40 years. You've seen from my art how I've struggled to avoid these encroaching shadows, with no way to unburden myself. But now I have you, and you finally have me. He ends the call. In my mind's eye, I see the last laugh, in which rainbow confetti erupts from the mouths of diners, laughing in the face of the figure of death who remains there, temporarily obscured. I see gutter folk, a mid-'80s depiction of nurses providing hands-on care to an AIDS patient. And it suddenly feels like performative empathy. I see the divine mess, a vivid celebration of celestial chaos, where noise drowns out the clarity of truth. I see Hercules in lace, in which the hero, draped in soft pink material, holds a club in one arm, slightly behind him, and which you may not notice, given the baby cradled in the other. I see Sebastian, in which the saint looks bored of his tiresome, endless suffering. I see Icarus's terror when I find artwork I'm entranced by. I offer myself up for captivity. I look at it loudly, close up, and quietly from a distance. I look at it in and out of focus. And there, that's me, in the corner of that park scene, doing an impression of being incidental. The painted door, for what feels like an eternity. I stare at the bloodied body without being able to move. It's sprawled at my feet, limbs flung wide open, limp, each arm and leg pointing in a different direction on the filthy cobblestone ground of the tiny, walled, dark, and abandoned courtyard. Above us, the moonlight and the sparks of stars flicker behind white clouds that slice through a deep blue sky, like ghost ships crossing distant, uncharted seas. The layers of mythical creatures and fearsome leviathans. With my free hand, I grope blindly at my own stomach, applying pressure to the wounds, the deep cuts that tore through flesh and muscles during the fight. Warm, dark blood gushes between my fingers, trickling down my arm, soaking the inner sleeve of my shirt and jacket. A lantern shines through the fogged glass of a third-floor window in the adjacent building. I run and hide, crouching behind a bush. Clenching my teeth, I stifle a groan. "Who's there?" demands the gruff, weathered voice of an old man. Through the tangle of leaves, cloaked in shadows, I watch him. He wears a long, white cotton nightgown and a matching cap. One hand holds the open window, while the other grips the lit lantern. He squints and scans the courtyard, fixing his gaze on the body. Hey, you degenerate drunkard. Go die somewhere else, Satan. Shoo. He yells like this for a minute or two, then grunts, mutters a curse, shuts the window, and disappears along with the light inside the room. I lift my head and look around, peering through one of the gaps in the ancient stone wall into the street. Seeing no one, I seize the opportunity to leave the scene. I rise, pull myself over the wall, and slip into the narrow, winding cobblestone streets. I try to move quickly, but quietly. I fail at both. The wound slows me down, saps my strength, the precision of my movements. And wherever I pass, I catch the attention of horses tied to posts or hitched to carriages, and dogs guarding gardens and courtyards. The former neigh and snort, the latter bark, bare their teeth, and growl behind fences, stone walls, or the iron bars of gates. The streets are deserted, except for the animals, silent save for their sounds, the gusts of wind, the rustling of leaves, the creak of hinges on lonely shop, and tavern signs swaying in the dim light. Of the lanterns hanging from sparsely spaced posts along the paths, only a few remain lit. I regret coming on foot, but at the same time, I know I had no choice. I couldn't risk having the coachman as a witness, and driving my own carriage alone would have raised too many suspicions. A rider draws far more attention than a man on foot. A man can move unnoticed, can hide at the first sign of danger, can leap over walls and slip through courtyards unseen, can climb walls and travel across rooftops. After a while, I stop feeling my legs, stop perceiving their movement. Despite my thick, fine clothes, I feel a terrible cold creeping up my spine, stabbing beneath my ribs, filling my chest and guts with dread. I collapse on my knees beside a wall and sit with my back against it in a dark alley, sheltered by shadows, trash, and foul smells. Just a minute, I think. I only need a minute. If I allow myself 1 or 100, I can't say. But I wake startled when the clamor of sirens and bells reaches my ears. I've been discovered. They're after me. I bury the fingers of my free hand in the crevices of the wall, between the stones, and pull myself back onto my feet. I resume dragging myself forward, attempting to run. I stagger in zigzags, stumble and nearly fall, collide with posts, carriages, empty stakes, and walls, yet press on, one street at a time and one turn at a time, choosing the most crooked and darkest paths, cutting through back alleys, narrow lanes, and forgotten open courtyards. The dreadful symphony of the pursuit never seems far, but also doesn't gain on me as much as I fear. It follows me closely, always keeping the same distance, as if it were holding back for now. It is a macabre, inhuman sound, seemingly coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. I am about to turn a corner, when I see the light, unlike any other I have ever encountered. It is not yellow or orange like the light of fire or lanterns. It is white, pulsating, alive, like sunlight itself. I stop, leaning against the wall of a building, mesmerized. The light crawls over the cobblestones like a living thing, formless and boundless. As it approaches, the colors of the lanterns, the animals, the stones, the ground, the walls, everything it is about to touch, fade away. It is as if the light is absorbing these colors, transforming objects into pencil sketches on white paper, like the ones I make before transferring my drawings in color to the canvases that I exchange for prestige, privilege, and fortune. Then the light swallows them, sucks up the colorless drafts as well, consumes them as if it were an immense, infinite mouth. The mouth of God, reclaiming into cosmic oblivion the living and the dead of this world. Behind the blinding curtain, the world disappears, ceasing to exist in a way that defies both physics and human intellect. Slowly, the light moves forward, a white void, smooth and shapeless, transforming what once was into nothingness. It is at that moment that the bells and sirens grow louder and closer, unbearably near. I look around and then start running again. I cross the intersection, with the light devouring the finite world to my right, and follow the street perpendicular to its advance. In a desperate attempt to lose my pursuers, I turn corners at random, sometimes left, sometimes right, zigzagging northward. My twists and turns are not always aimless. At times, I am forced to turn here and there, or backtrack when the wall of light appears just a few steps ahead of me, burning my eyes and rushing to envelop me. I shield my face behind my free hand and dive into the first available path to the right or left, or pivot on my heels and retrace my steps to the previous crossroads. Thus, I conquer the paved streets and the dirt roads, crossing the mile-long stretch that separates the town from my private hill and the mansion crowning it. I pass through the garden gates and rush to the front door. The guards and other staff still awake at this hour are startled, surrounding me, offering to help me walk, to carry me to a bed, a chair. They inquire about my injury, whether they should send a rider to fetch the physician from the village. I command them all to step back, to leave me alone, ordering that every door and window be sealed. For a brief moment, I work alongside them in this endeavor, but then I turn and make my way down the corridors to the bedroom. I kneel by the side of the massive canopy bed and touch Maria's warm face as she sleeps in peace and oblivion, undisturbed by the banging of doors, the shouted exchange of orders, or the music threatening to unravel my perfect world. The clamor of that million-strong chorus of sirens and bells. Gently, I wake her and help her to her feet. Quickly, my love, come with me. You must come with me, I whisper urgently, pulling her by the hand. She follows, trembling, crying, asking about all that blood, about the injuries, and the blood, the blood, the blood. So it was all over, then. Had I won? Were we finally free to live our love, no longer bound by escapes, lies, persecutions, or consequences? I pull her by the hand through the corridors to my studio. Along the way, I grab one of the lanterns hanging from rings fixed to the stone walls. I enter, pull her inside, and lock the door behind us. Frantically, I fly from one side of the room to the other, ensuring all other entrances and windows are shut as well. I move unsteadily, stumbling, pushing aside finished paintings, knocking over empty easels, unfinished canvases, and tables cluttered with papers, palettes, jars of paint, and brushes. Once convinced that every possible entry is sealed, I return to Maria, grasping her hand again, and lead her toward one of the walls. I scour the floor for a brush and a jar of paint. When I open the first jar, I find inside a solid, useless, gray lump. I hurry around the room, gathering more jars, only to find them equally futile. I try using the paint from the palettes, attempting to make it at least pliable with saliva. But to no avail. I find myself clutching a dry, useless brush, turning helplessly in place, sobbing, groaning in pain. Then I remember the wound, the blood. I return to the wall, grip trembling, inconsolable and bewildered Maria's hand. Dip the brush into my own wound, pulling it out with bristles drenched in blood, dripping red. Together, we approach the wall, and I begin to work. The bells and sirens grow ever closer, unbearably close, now just outside the corridor, sounding in neighboring rooms. With desperate and vigorous strokes, I paint a door, a doorknob, our only escape route. In my mind, I paint on the other side the perfect world, the perfect life, the happy ending we deserve. I squeeze Maria's hand a little tighter. I let the brush slip from my sticky, blood-soaked fingers, falling with a muffled thud beneath the cacophony of sirens and bells. I close my eyes and take a deep breath. With my free hand, I reach toward the doorknob and grasp nothing. No, this can't be. I open my eyes and try again, this time keeping them wide open. Around us, the bells and sirens engulf the world, drowning out every other sound and voice. I try to scream, but no sound comes out. I look around, over my shoulder. From every corner of the studio, through the cracks in the windows and doors, the white, deadly light, that devouring force, seeps into the room. It stretches through gaps between boards and under the passages, swallowing colors, easels, brushes, canvases, and loose sheets of paper. I turn to Maria for one last embrace, but there is no time to know if the movement is completed or if the light is faster, extinguishing us before our farewell can come to fruition. I wake up with my head pounding, the bells and sirens exploding within my temples, and then the music begins to make sense. It sounds familiar, and I realize it is not composed of actual bells or sirens. Blindly, I stretch my arm to the side, fumbling for my phone on the nightstand, and turn off the alarm. I squint at the blinding white light of the sun streaming through the window of my small room at the foot of my bed. Instinctively, still shrouded in the fog of dreams, I touch my stomach, searching for wounds, only to find it unscathed. Afterward, I get up, wait for the occupant of room 23 to finish their shower, take mine, get dressed, fill my travel mug with coffee in the kitchen on the ground floor of the pension, and rush to the bus stop a block away. Exactly at 7:45 a.m., I knock on the side door of the cafe where I work, located in the food court on the second floor of the Central Mall. William, the grumpy and bald manager, lets me in with a scowl and a grunt. I promptly put on my apron over my uniform, wear my cap, and take up my position. By 8:00 a.m., we are open and running full steam. At 8:17 a.m., Maria arrives. My sweet, small, slender, blonde, and gentle Maria with blue eyes. It's Thursday, and as usual, she is accompanied by her husband. He looks different in 21st century clothes, free of blood, with both eyes intact and without fatal gashes across his neck. They hold hands as they stand in line. At 8:22 a.m., they are in front of me, smiling and politely placing their order while they speak and smile, and I absent-mindedly jot down their requests. I see through the space between their bodies and heads, across the food court, into the art studio on the other side. At once, even from that distance, my eyes find the painting that captivated me 3 days ago. Among the dozens of canvases and easels displayed in the windows, a couple holding hands before a door painted on a wall. The man, clearly a celebrated artist from the 18th or 19th century, still clutching a brush wet with paint. And the door. That door. Ah, that door. And that freedom. And that door. And suddenly, they could go anywhere they wanted to, could love each other and be happy wherever they pleased, as much as their hearts desired, in any place they chose, and nothing else could follow them. Not through that door. Nothing beyond them would be able to cross it. Certainly, nothing bad or evil. I finish jotting down their order. We exchange pleasantries, and the couple turns their back on me. Maria turns her back on me, taking a seat at one of the tables with her husband. The two share a brief kiss, a tender smile. Clearing my throat, I call out in a loud and steady voice, "Next!" and the line moves. And life goes on around here. The Painter of Souls. It was the first time in 2 years that the group of friends had reunited for this trip. After many cancellations and unfinished plans, everyone had made an effort to make this outing a reality. They hadn't spoken much during the funeral 2 years ago, and it almost seemed as if their friendship would dissolve soon after. But through the video game chats they frequented, nostalgia and good memories rekindled the bonds that had weakened with the loss. They talked about how competitive Bennett had been in many of the games they played, how he would ask for rematches multiple times, failure after failure. They spoke about how he would have wanted them to spend time remembering him, just like this, with laughter and anecdotes. The three of them went from contacting each other through video game chats to messaging on their phones and making video calls. "We should go on the trip," Arlo had suggested one day during one of their group calls. There was a long silence before Thiago said, "Do you mean?" "Yes," Arlo confirmed. The travel plan Bennett shared days before. "Before what happened? Are you sure?" Roman asked. It was his idea, and he was the most excited about it. We never understood what had motivated him so much to organize this trip. "He wanted us to meet someone," Arlo said. "That's the only thing I remember." "Someone in the middle of the rainforest?" Thiago inquired. "Well, it was also a sightseeing trip around the city, and a chance to visit many of the famous archaeological exhibitions in the area. The museums, too," added Arlo, who had, in fact, graduated in art history. "And what about the person you said he wanted to find?" Roman asked. "I suppose we don't have enough information to look into that," Arlo observed. "That's why I suggest we take the trip in his honor and try to enjoy it as the four of us would have. You know?" "That's not a bad idea," Thiago said, encouraged. "I could use a holiday. I need to get out of here. An excuse to take a break from my business." "And when was the last time we traveled together?" Roman added. "Let's do it." Just like that, the three of them made their preparations for the trip on the following weeks. They looked up information about their destination and its tourist attractions, paid for their plane tickets, and agreed to meet at the airport 2 hours before the flight. On his way to the airport, Arlo had decided to stop by Bennett's house. He knocked on the door, and it was Bennett's mother who answered. The woman looked at him in surprise, but she immediately moved to hug him once she recognized him. "My goodness, Arlo, it's been so long. I wasn't expecting to see you," After the funeral? Come in, come in. She invited him inside. They entered the living room, where photos of Bennett with his siblings and parents filled every corner of the room. Arlo avoided looking at them as his mother offered him a seat. No, thank you. He smiled politely. I was just passing by to let you know that I'm going on a trip. Actually, the three of us are going. It's a plan Bennett shared with us before he left. The woman nodded, perfectly understanding what he meant. Yes, the trip. He wouldn't stop talking about it. I'm so glad the three of you have decided to go. Bennett would be so happy to know this. I know. Arlo sighed. I know we haven't spoken to you since the funeral. We tried to reach out, but it was very difficult. I understand, Arlo, she said, placing a comforting hand on his arm. I just wanted to stop by to tell you about our plans in person, and also to see his room one last time. I hope that's not too intrusive a request. I just needed to see the last space he was in. The woman nodded again, understandingly. It's not intrusive at all. Go ahead, you can go in. To be honest, it's a relief to have someone else in that room, even if only for a few minutes. My husband and I are starting to feel the deep silence coming from it. His mother remained in the living room, while Arlo climbed the stairs to the room. He opened the door, and immediately, the unmistakable scent of Bennett's deodorant reached his nostrils, mixed with the smell of a closed-up room and the dust floating from the shelves. Most of his belongings and clothes were packed away in boxes that the family would donate to charity. But the posters and printed images on the walls had not yet been taken down. Arlo stepped closer to observe them carefully. Bennett used to draw a lot in his spare time. Despite having graduated in computer science and cybersecurity, his true passion had been drawing and sketching, something he had dedicated himself to in his free time, both inside and outside of university. On the wall were drawings that seemed to depict them, the group of friends, peculiarly colored in primary colors. In some drawings, Roman and Thiago were shaded in pink tones. In others, a slightly more purple hue. Bennett himself was shaded in gray. Arlo was always painted in red. Arlo gazed at the drawings with resentment, holding back the urge to tear the paper from the wall. During the first 2 days at their destination, the three friends spent their time at the 4-star hotel they had booked. When Arlo suggested going to the city center to explore, the other two sighed in annoyance. We have a week and a half to explore whatever you want, said Thiago, still wrapped in his sheets. We won't have the chance to enjoy this level of luxury once these holidays are over. You're the one finishing a PhD in history and art, Arlo. You can go without us, added Roman as he put on his swimming trunks. Getting ready to head to the pool, Arlo irritably reminded them, this trip is for Bennett. You know he would have wanted to see the exhibitions and museums. You've been saying that for weeks, Roman retorted, turning to face him. What's with the sudden interest in what he wanted to explore? If I remember correctly, You always ignored all the drawings and paintings he tried to share with us. Now Tiago sat up on the bed, watching his friends as they confronted each other. "What's gotten into you, Roman?" Arlo asked. "I don't know. Why are you making us feel like you're the one who cares the most about his death and his final wishes? We mourn his loss too. Don't try to act like you're above us with your false moral code." Arlo simply pulled a small, crumpled note from his pocket and shoved it in Roman's face. This is the place he wanted to visit, along with the name of the person he wanted to see. Roman snatched the paper to read it himself. Tiago got up to take a look as well and asked, "Was this what you went to get from his house?" Avoiding the question, Arlo said, "I'm not trying to impose some false moral code on you. It's normal to feel guilt, but the best thing we can do is show a bit of interest in what he loved. That's all I'm trying to do." With that, he left the room. Tiago and Roman exchanged uneasy glances. "I have no idea what's going through his head," said Roman. Tiago shrugged, though his expression remained troubled. "You heard what he said. It's normal to feel guilt. I'm sure he's going through the same thing." An hour later, the three of them made their way into the city, stopping by the tourist spots they had planned in advance. This time, however, the excitement they had initially felt for the trip was gone. A sense of impending doom loomed over them, and there was nothing they could do to dispel it. All of a sudden, what had been a journey in memory of their friend was being exposed as the farce they had tried to mask with that ridiculous excuse. The last place left to visit was the shop. It was an art shop. From the outside, it had that vintage aesthetic that attracted art lovers looking for something unique and different, something timeless, stuck in time. The three entered cautiously. The shop was empty, and the light streaming through the glass windows fell upon the golden and bronze frames of the various paintings hanging and stacked everywhere. All the paintings depicted people, some in groups, others alone. At first glance, they seemed like photographs, edited in different colors, but upon closer inspection, one could appreciate the hand-drawn strokes and the pigment of watercolors and oil paint. The style of these paintings looks familiar, Tiago murmured. Without much enthusiasm, Roman nodded. "Yeah, this is exactly how Bennett used to draw." The characters in the paintings were painted monochromatically. Each person in each painting had a certain tone of color assigned to them. Some colors were more intense than others. Background characters in landscapes or scenes were usually depicted in different shades of gray. In portraits, many were also colored in gray. The three had been so absorbed in the artwork that they hadn't noticed the man who had approached them to greet them. "Greetings," he said. The group startled and turned their attention to him. The shop owner wasn't as old as they had expected. He was likely in his mid-30s. He dressed just like one of them, except for the paint-stained apron he wore. His eyes were a peculiar silver color that stood out in the dim light of the shop. "We're looking for Keita," Arlo stated. "That's me," the man confirmed, pointing to himself. His strong West African accent was evident in his words. "I've been expecting you. Did Bennett talk to you about us?" Thiago stammered. With a rather calm demeanor, Keita tilted his head as if the answer was somewhat complicated. "He spoke to me about you the first time he came here. But that was also the last time I ever saw him," he said, turning to search through a stack of paintings behind him. Carefully, he pulled one out. "Exactly 2 years ago. This is what I painted." Keita placed the painting in front of them. Roman paled at the sight of it. Thiago still couldn't understand, and Arlo remained silent, pressing his lips together. The painting was a reproduction of a real photo. The 4 of them had taken 3 years ago on a road trip to the mountains. The picture had been taken with a camera set on a tripod. However, in this painting, only Arlo, Roman, and Thiago smiled at the camera, standing in front of a rocky landscape with waterfalls cascading into a lake. Bennett appeared as a gray shadow in the background, at the edge of the lake, a few meters away from them. Beside him, another gray figure crouched at Bennett's feet, as if crying. It looked like the figure of a woman. In the painting, Arlo was colored in a deep red, while Thiago and Roman were shades of maroon. "Where did you get this from?" Arlo demanded. "From the truth," Keita answered. "You guys remember exactly what happened that day, don't you?" No one answered. The silence itself was confirmation. "I can see the color of your souls from miles and miles away," the artist continued. "I don't need to know you to start painting what each of you inspires in me." His tone became more accusatory as he went on. "Bennett had this gift too. He came to me because he wanted to learn more about it. And you, Arlo, you knew that." Roman turned to Arlo, stunned by such information. "Yet you made him self-medicate with drugs so he would lose his mind and end up taking his own life," Keita continued. "I didn't want Bennett to die," Arlo protested, raising his voice. For the first time in years, he seemed to be losing his composure. "I just wanted him to forget and stop painting those damn drawings. He was going to get us in trouble." "You wanted him to forget her?" Keita asked. He walked over to his desk and picked up some drawings, this time on notebook paper, traced by a different hand. "Bennett gave me these during his last visit." Thiago held them in his hands. Upon seeing the frantic sketches of a cadaverous woman in black, gray, and green colors, he gasped, "My God!" and let the sheets fall to the floor in shock. No one bothered to pick them up. "She was on the way," Roman murmured, as if talking to himself, as if justifying it to himself. "She came out from between the trees like a mad woman. That's why we hit her with the car. She fell into the lake, and there was nothing else we could do," Thiago exclaimed desperately. Why jump into the lake to retrieve a body that was already lifeless? All that Arlo said to Keita was, "What do you plan to do with all of this? Send it to the police?" At the absurdity of his question, Keita replied, "I am not in charge of the punishment of men. Justice will be served, but not by me." His silver eyes gleamed as he spoke. "Just keep in mind that now 2 souls are tied to your fate." As soon as they left the place, the 3 of them didn't say a word to each other until they reached the hotel. The following day, each took their flight back home. In the following months, Tiago turned himself in to the police as an accomplice in the cover-up of the hit and run. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison. When the police interrogated Roman, he revealed that although they were all drunk at the time of the incident, it was Arlo who was driving the car and who suggested they continue the trip. Roman was facing 2 years in prison. No one knew of Arlo's whereabouts. He seemed to have moved and changed his name. The authorities did what they could to search for him. But since the victim had been someone suffering from a mental illness and had run away from her own home, and therefore had little family who could report her disappearance, except for a sister, they were content with having 2 guilty individuals in prison and letting the one who escaped go free. Months after all of this, in their respective cells, Roman and Tiago received a letter in a brown envelope. The letter consisted of a pencil-drawn illustration showing Arlo drowning in a lake of skulls. The lake was the only part painted in a deep red, like blood. When the world went gray. Prologue. Joy, happiness, life, creation, the spark of beginning, the heartbeat of earth itself, the endless manifestation of color and beauty and light, blossoming, growing, unfurling into something infinite. And then, one day, nothing. The world, once bursting with radiance, was swallowed whole, devoured by an oblivion so complete that even memory faded to grayscale, leaving behind only the cruel, inescapable taunt of black and white, a silent mockery of what once was, shadows of what had been clung to the charred land beyond our shelter, reaching with desperate fingers toward a sky that had long since turned its back. And as the relentless nothingness took and took and took, we were left only to bear witness, to suffer in the empty remains of what we had destroyed. And as the world faded to monochrome, I became one of the countless shades of despair. Our city, once flooded with bustling citizens driving cars of every color, is reduced skeletal frames of buildings and cracked roads. A cruel reminder of the countless nights I spent, sleepless, hidden away in my attic, thriving off the colors coating my paint palette. The word around us hasn't just been burned. It's been erased. The vibrancy stripped away. I look around our underground shelter, and for people struggling to survive, everyone was perfectly content with making conversation from the concrete where they sat, as if they weren't on their deathbeds. We scrape by with the rations the leaders distribute weekly, our bodies weakened by hunger, our minds fractured by the unbearable monotony of a world without color. But it isn't the hunger or paranoia that haunts us, but the weight of absence, the memories of color fading with each passing, dissolving to add to the torture of the ash flakes contaminating the air. Black, white, gray, repeat. Every damn time. And then I find myself thinking the same, though I thought since the day the world was drained of color. This is a dream. Colors can't just disappear. And yet, here we were in this mere sketch of what was a vast land that stretched on through the remains of the nuclear tragedy, colored in shades of ash and bone, where nothing grows and nothing dares to blossom. For now, I resort to my only escape, my eyelids suddenly feeling too heavy, my mind too weary. Symptoms we've long since accepted as the norm, and allow myself to relax against the concrete wall. Part 1. Rations are low. Too low. A small group of us was sent into the depths of our despair to scrounge together enough food to ensure our, at the least, survival. Survival doesn't always grace the entirety of our measly society, and it's unfortunate. But death, even at 17, is not an unfamiliar fate. I look out into the rubble, finally lifting my eyes from my sneakered feet for the first time since they stepped beyond the shelter's entrance. The land is silent. The only sound, the crunching of boots landing against who knows what, and the whipping wind nipped at my skin, scattering my once auburn-streaked hair across the back of my jacket. Black, white, gray, rep. A gleam catches my eye. We're at the edge of the ruins. That's impossible. My feet are already betraying me, already venturing closer to this foreign feeling of freedom. 5 years ago was the last time I was graced with the presence of color. 5 years since the bombs. 5 years since this world was diminished to a mere grayscale. 5 years. For color to still exist would be out of the question. I track the glistening spark of hope, forcing my eyes to stay open, forcing my feet one in front of the other until, where'd it go? I blink. Scanning the scene, my eyes dart frantically from each piece of Colorly's scrap to the next. Come on. Come on. Come Nothing. The unmistakable feeling of wilted grass prickles at my knees as they hit the ground where it was. The hope of color in an achromatic world slipped through my hoary fingers like sand slipping through the grasp of the ocean's spray continuously. Elara? Sienna, one of the other young scavengers asked, kneeling down in front of me. You okay? I blink back tears. I didn't know were welling. Forcing composure I don't have, even as I feel the feather-light touch of Sienna's hand on my shoulder. I know I can tell Sienna the truth. She did take me in after the bombs killed my parents, but to burden her would be to break myself in the process. Yeah, my voice is breathy, as if I'm questioning my own answer, while letting the first one that comes to mind slip past my lips. If anyone is going to believe me, it's going to be her. She is the only family I have left, after all. I thought I saw color. Sienna's muted, but still striking. Once blue eyes go wide, clawing to clench onto the sliver of hope and clinging onto it like a lifeline. Anything, everything. She leans closer, the shoulder-length, ashy hue filling her head, now slipping past her ear. If anyone can find it, it's you. She said it like it was the easiest thing in the world. But that was just the way Sienna made everything seem. Easy. Like it wasn't the sight reignites a desperate hope, a longing to believe that life in its fullest form is not truly gone. Part 2. I can't pretend like it didn't happen. I can't unsee it. I know it's risky. I know there are people here who need every last bit of help they can get. But if there's a better, beautifully vivid world out there, inching to be found, it needs to be found. So here I am, in the thick, inky embrace of the dead of night, my fingers curling tightly around the worn, chilled rungs of the ladder that stretches upward like a fragile, rust-bitten bridge to a world I have long since sworn, with every fiber of my being, to unravel, to tear apart piece by piece, if that's what it takes, all in pursuit of that elusive, flickering glint. Something small, something distant, something that once dared to catch and hold the fleeting light of a bleached and weary sun. Because if there is one truth I refuse to let slip through the cracks of time, it is that color, in all its wild, untamed brilliance, is not just an indulgence, not merely an ornament to be admired from afar, but a necessity, a lifeblood that the world not only craves, but deserves to be drenched in, to be wholly consumed by. And if it is within my grasp to bring it back, to pry it from the hands of whatever force dares to smother it, then I will chase it, seize it, and deliver it without hesitation no matter the cost. Singed, sealed, delivered. Address: a monochrome world once called Earth, surrounded by rubble. I step out into the spotted sky and let the chill of a rare wind smack me right in the face. A stark contrast to the warmth seeping across my chest. I shake my head at myself and how I utterly disregarded the warnings of the other survivors, and so effortlessly snuck out of the security of our shelter into the wasteland so eagerly. I glance around the land stretched out before me, waste crowding the ground and ashes polluting the air. And I swear the hues of gray, now illuminated by stars and a moon, that appeared as dots and a waning semicircle, were darker than black, everything meshing with the ink-stained sky. I will find it. I'll find it if it kills me. I will. Then, just beyond the endless stretch of night, a shimmer, the faintest trace of warmth against the cold monotony. It's real, I murmur, though no one is around to overhear. It has to be. Part 3. I walk for hours, and it still feels like I've gone nowhere. I'm still surrounded by the gray void, still surrounded by remains of a better life, and still with the shimmering speck of hope before me, not stopping. The landscape is an endless graveyard of the past. Twisted steel, collapsed buildings, and roads that crack beneath my feet stretch on like the bones of a forgotten civilization. Everything is still. No birds cry overhead, no wind whispers through trees, because there are no trees left to whisper through. The silence is heavy, pressing against me like the weight of the sky itself. I huff, pressing my back against a crumbling door, not bothering to look at the house, but rather the swing set across the road, peering intently as it swings back and forth in the stillness of night, moved by something unseen. Perhaps the ghost of the child who cherished it. A sigh slips past my lips at the tempting offer of sleep, but refusing to give in quiet yet, I push my weight forward. My feet drag, weighing me down. Black, white, great repeat. It's infuriating that I can't close the distance between me and my last hope of color. My eyes snag on a reflection in the road. My pace quickens. My footfalls echo in the empty, colorless world as I near the glinting surface. A mirror, cracked, dirt-speckled, abandoned in the middle of the road, like it doesn't belong. Like nothing belongs. I slow, breathing hard. My reflection stares back at me, distorted by the fractures spider-webbing across the glass. The same dull world is behind me, the same lifeless sky above. But beneath me, just beyond the cracks, something else, green, my breath catches. A patch of grass, impossibly vivid, bleeding through the reflection, as if it exists in another world, as if it's real, somewhere, somehow. I step forward, heart pounding, kneeling at the mirror's edge. My fingers hover over the glass. The colors look too bright, too alive, like they'd burn if I touched them. But I don't hesitate. I kick the mirror. It shatters under my heel with a sharp, crystalline crack. Splinters of glass scatter across the road, glinting like stars in the empty light. I brace myself for something, anything, a shift in the air, a tremor in the ground, a door opening where there was none before. But when I look down, the green is gone, just shards of broken glass, catching the darkened sky in their edges. Just my own reflection, fractured into 100 jagged pieces. I lurch forward, scraping at the road where the mirror used to be. Nothing. No hidden portal. No sliver of color left behind. My hands shake. Tears, clear wetness, drip down my cheeks in slowed fashion. My breathing comes in clipped gasps. I saw it. I know I did. The wind stirs, sending a few stray fragments skittering away. I watch them disappear down the road, swallowed by the nothingness stretching endlessly ahead. And then I keep walking, pushing harder, further, relentless. Part 4. I refuse to let myself stop. I won't. I can't. Not if I want any chance at finding the color I've recklessly craved. My eyes follow the path I left in the dust, the sun rising higher in the sky. And then, thunk, the ground hits me before I can brace for it. Pain shoots through my skull in sharp, electric volts. I glance up, dazed, and see the thick trunk of the tree I just slammed into. Its rough bark pressing into my chest, pinning me to the earth. I wince, trying to push myself up, but my head swims with dizziness. The tree stands tall, towering over me like an ancient sentinel, its branches casting long shadows in the early morning light. I can feel its strength, as if it's mocking my weakness, daring me to rise again. I press my palms to the ground, leaves crunching beneath them, and accept this tree's challenge. The rough earth presses against my skin, grounding me in this moment, daring me to rise. A chill runs through my spine as I push myself up, dirt clinging to my fingertips. The air is thick, damp, charged with something unseen but undeniable. Prepared to confront the tree, I stand to my feet and ball my fists, the tension in my body coiling like a spring. I'm ready. My knuckles tighten, breath steadying, until a sharp, almost imperceptible sting pricks at my palm. Crunch. My hand flattens instinctively, fingers twitching as I feel the sensation spread. The leaves, crisp and brittle, stick to my skin like they belong there. A brief annoyance flickers through me, and I almost brush them off without a second thought, until something stops me cold. The color, not gray, not black, not the dry, lifeless husks of darkness. These leaves are green. It's faint, fading, dying, but it's there. The realization steals the breath from my lungs. Green here, among the decay. Color still exists, but it is fading. The world is not truly black and white. It is dying in slow motion. The nuclear bombs did not erase color. It severed life's connection to it, leaving only those who remember it to witness its vanishing. A smirk, one I haven't worn since the day of the bombs, breaks across my lips. It all makes sense. I have to find the color. I have to find the, what about everyone else? What about Sienna? I cut myself off, bending to gather a handful of dull leaves from the ground. Sienna would want this. If anyone can find it, it's you. My grip on the leaves tightens, as if I can hold on to her words, onto her for guidance like I always have. And I intend to do just that. One step for hope, another for faith, 2 steps for a new life, another for Sienna. And then I'm sprinting, not daring to look back. Finn, when the world went gray. Joy, happiness, life, creation, the spark of beginning, the heartbeat of Earth itself, the endless manifestation of color and beauty and light, blossoming, growing, unfurling into something infinite. And then, one day, nothing. The world, once bursting with radiance, was swallowed whole, devoured by an oblivion so complete that even memory faded to grayscale, leaving behind only the cruel, inescapable taunt of black and white, a silent mockery of what once was, shadows of what had been clung to the charred land beyond our shelter, reaching with desperate fingers toward a sky that had long since turned its back. And as the relentless nothingness took and took and took, we were left only to bear witness, to suffer in the empty remains of what we had destroyed. And as the world faded to monochrome, I became one of the countless shades of despair. Our city, once flooded with bustling citizens driving cars of every color, is reduced skeletal frames of buildings and cracked roads. A cruel reminder of the countless nights I spent, sleepless, hidden away in my attic, thriving off the colors coating my paint palette. The word around us hasn't just been burned, it's been erased. The vibrancy stripped away. I look around our underground shelter, and for people struggling to survive, everyone was perfectly content with making conversation from the concrete where they sat. as if they weren't on their deathbeds. We scrape by with the rations the leaders distribute weekly, our bodies weakened by hunger, our minds fractured by the unbearable monotony of a world without color. But it isn't the hunger or paranoia that haunts us, but the weight of absence, the memories of color fading with each passing, dissolving to add to the torture of the ash flakes contaminating the air. Black, white, gray, repeat. Every damn time. And then I find myself thinking the same, though I thought, since the day the world was drained of color. This is a dream. Colors can't just disappear. And yet, here we were in this mere sketch of what was. A vast land that stretched on through the remains of the nuclear tragedy, colored in shades of ash and bone, where nothing grows and nothing dares to blossom. For now, I resort to my only escape, my eyelids suddenly feeling too heavy, my mind too weary. Symptoms we've long since accepted as the norm, and allow myself to relax against the concrete wall. Part 1. Rations are low. Too low. A small group of us was sent into the depths of our despair to scrounge together enough food to ensure our, at the least, survival. Survival doesn't always grace the entirety of our measly society, and it's unfortunate. But death, even at 17, is not an unfamiliar fate. I look out into the rubble, finally lifting my eyes from my sneakered feet for the first time since they stepped beyond the shelter's entrance. The land is silent. The only sound, the crunching of boots landing against who knows what, and the whipping wind nipped at my skin, scattering my once auburn-streaked hair across the back of my jacket. Black, white, gray, a gleam catches my eye. We're at the edge of the ruins. That's impossible. My feet are already betraying me, already venturing closer to this foreign feeling of freedom. 5 years ago was the last time I was graced with the presence of color. 5 years since the bombs. 5 years since this world was diminished to a mere grayscale. 5 years. For color to still exist would be out of the question. I track the glistening spar of hope, forcing my eyes to stay open, forcing my feet one in front of the other, until, where'd it go? I blink, scanning the scene. My eyes dart frantically from each piece of colorless scrap to the next. Come on. Come on. Come. Nothing. The unmistakable feeling of wilted grass prickles at my knees as they hit the ground where it was. The hope of color in an achromatic world slipped through my hoary fingers like sand slipping through the grasp of the ocean spray continuously. Elara? Sienna, one of the other young scavengers, asked, kneeling down in front of me. You okay? I blink back tears, I didn't know were welling, forcing composure I don't have, even as I feel the feather-light touch of Sienna's hand on my shoulder. I know I can tell Sienna the truth. She did take me in after the bombs killed my parents, but to burden her would be to break myself in the process. Yeah. My voice is breathy, as if I'm questioning my own answer, while letting the first one that comes to mind slip past my lips. If anyone is going to believe me, it's going to be her. She is the only family I have left, after all. I thought I saw color. Sienna's muted, but still striking. Once blue eyes go wide, clawing to clench onto the sliver of hope and clinging onto it like a lifeline. Anything, everything. She leans closer, the shoulder-length ashy hue filling her head, now slipping past her ear. If anyone can find it, it's you. She said it like it was the easiest thing in the world. But that was just the way Sienna made everything seem easy. Like it wasn't the sight reignites a desperate hope, a longing to believe that life, in its fullest form, is not truly gone. Part 2. I can't pretend like it didn't happen. I can't unsee it. I know it's risky. I know there are people here who need every last bit of help they can get. But if there's a better, beautifully vivid world out there, inching to be found, it needs to be found. So here I am, in the thick, inky embrace of the dead of night, my fingers curling tightly around the worn, chilled rungs of the ladder that stretches upward like a fragile, rust-bitten bridge to a world I have long since sworn, with every fiber of my being, to unravel, to tear apart piece by piece if that's what it takes, all in pursuit of that elusive, flickering glint, something small, something distant, something that once dared to catch and hold the fleeting light of a bleached and weary sun. Because if there is one truth I refuse to let slip through the cracks of time, it is that color, in all its wild, untamed brilliance, is not just an indulgence, not merely an ornament to be admired from afar, but a necessity, a lifeblood that the world not only craves, but deserves to be drenched in, to be wholly consumed by. And if it is within my grasp to bring it back, to pry it from the hands of whatever force dares to smother it, then I will chase it, seize it, and deliver it without hesitation, no matter the cost. Singed, sealed, delivered. Address: a monochrome world once called Earth. Surrounded by rubble, I step out into the spotted sky and let the chill of a rare wind smack me right in the face, a stark contrast to the warmth seeping across my chest. I shake my head at myself and how I utterly disregarded the warnings of the other survivors, and so effortlessly snuck out of the security of our shelter into the wasteland so eagerly. I glance around the land stretched out before me, waste crowding the ground and ashes polluting the air. And I swear, the hues of gray, now illuminated by stars and a moon, that appeared as dots and a waning semicircle, were darker than black, everything meshing with the ink-stained sky. I will find it. I'll find it. If it kills me, I will. Then, just beyond the endless stretch of night, a shimmer, the faintest trace of warmth against the cold monotony. It's real, I murmur, though no one is around to overhear. It has to be. Part 3. I walk for hours, and it still feels like I've gone nowhere. I'm still surrounded by the gray void, still surrounded by remains of a better life, and still with the shimmering speck of hope before me, not stopping. The landscape is an endless graveyard of the past. Twisted steel, collapsed buildings, and roads that crack beneath my feet stretch on like the bones of a forgotten civilization. Everything is still. No birds cry overhead. No wind whispers through trees, because there are no trees left to whisper through. The silence is heavy, pressing against me like the weight of the sky itself. I huff, pressing my back against a crumbling door, not bothering to look at the house, but rather the swing set across the road, peering intently as it swings back and forth in the stillness of night, moved by something unseen, perhaps the ghost of the child who cherished it. A sigh slips past my lips at the tempting offer of sleep, but refusing to give in quiet yet. I push my weight forward. My feet drag, weighing me down. Black, white, gray, repeat. It's infuriating that I can't close the distance between me and my last hope of color. My eyes snag on a reflection in the road. My pace quickens. My footfalls echo in the empty, colorless world as I near the glinting surface. A mirror, cracked, dirt-speckled, abandoned in the middle of the road, like it doesn't belong. Like nothing belongs. I slow, breathing hard. My reflection stares back at me, distorted by the fractures spider-webbing across the glass. The same dull world is behind me. The same lifeless sky above. But beneath me, just beyond the cracks, something else, green, my breath catches. A patch of grass, impossibly vivid, bleeding through the reflection as if it exists in another world. As if it's real, somewhere, somehow. I step forward, heart pounding, kneeling at the mirror's edge. My fingers hover over the glass. The colors look too bright, too alive, like they'd burn if I touched them. But I don't hesitate. I kick the mirror. It shatters under my heel, with a sharp, crystalline crack. Splinters of glass scatter across the road, glinting like stars in the empty light. I brace myself for something, anything. A shift in the air, a tremor in the ground, a door opening where there was none before. But when I look down, the green is gone, just shards of broken glass, catching the darkened sky in their edges. Just my own reflection, fractured into 100 jagged pieces. I lurch forward, scraping at the road where the mirror used to be. Nothing. No hidden portal. No sliver of color left behind. My hands shake. Tears, clear wetness, drip down my cheeks in slowed fashion. My breathing comes in clipped gasps. I saw it. I know I did. The wind stirs, sending a few stray fragments skittering away. I watch them disappear down the road, swallowed by the nothingness stretching endlessly ahead. And then I keep walking, pushing harder, further, relentless. Part 4. I refuse to let myself stop. I won't. I can't. Not if I want any chance at finding the color I've recklessly craved. My eyes follow the path I left in the dust, the sun rising higher in the sky. And then, thunk, the ground hits me before I can brace for it. Pain shoots through my skull in sharp, electric volts. I glance up, dazed, and see the thick trunk of the tree I just slammed into. Its rough bark pressing into my chest, pinning me to the earth. I wince, trying to push myself up, but my head swims with dizziness. The tree stands tall, towering over me like an ancient sentinel, its branches casting long shadows in the early morning light. I can feel its strength, as if it's mocking my weakness, daring me to rise again. I press my palms to the ground, leaves crunching beneath them, and accept this tree's challenge. The rough earth presses against my skin, grounding me in this moment, daring me to rise. A chill runs through my spine as I push myself up, dirt clinging to my fingertips. The air is thick, damp, charged with something unseen but undeniable. Prepared to confront the tree, I stand to my feet and ball my fists, the tension in my body coiling like a spring. I'm ready. My knuckles tighten, breath steadying, until a sharp, almost imperceptible sting pricks at my palm. Crunch. My hand flattens instinctively, fingers twitching as I feel the sensation spread. The leaves, crisp and brittle, stick to my skin like they belong there. A brief annoyance flickers through me, and I almost brush them off without a second thought, until something stops me cold. The color, not gray, not black, not the dry, lifeless husks of darkness. These leaves are green. It's faint, fading, dying, but it's there. The realization steals the breath from my lungs. Green here. Among the decay, color still exists, but it is fading. The world is not truly black and white. It is dying in slow motion. The nuclear bombs did not erase color. It severed life's connection to it, leaving only those who remember it to witness its vanishing. A smirk, one I haven't worn since the day of the bombs, breaks across my lips. It all makes sense. I have to find the color. I have to find the, what about everyone else? What about Sienna? I cut myself off, bending to gather a handful of dull leaves from the ground. Sienna would want this. If anyone can find it, it's you. My grip on the leaves tightens, as if I can hold on to her words, onto her, for guidance, like I always have. And I intend to do just that. One step. For hope, another. For faith, 2 steps. For a new life, another. For Sienna, and then I'm sprinting, not daring to look back.